Well, welcome to our dust collection seminar. I know people have been waiting for this one for a while. We've had a few reschedules, so I apologize for that. Dennis and I started working on this a while back, and we quickly realized that it's definitely we can't cover everything in one seminar, so we're probably going to be a part 2, part 3, something like that in the near future. So, and we want to hear from you guys on what your questions are and what maybe that part 2 and part 3 might be. But we got to start somewhere, so we're going to start with the basics. Today we're going to cover shop vacs, dust extractors, dust collectors. We're going to touch on some new products. We're also going to talk about some things that you can do for some of your tools as far as getting them set up and ready for dust collection. And then we're going to look at a couple of shop layouts, and then we're just going to touch on a couple of systems and a couple of different approaches if you are going to do a whole shop system. So with that, we'll talk about a few new products real quick that are kind of cool. And Dennis, you want to talk about Le Hose?
Oh, this?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a Rockler rubber hose. I have this in my shop, and I just wouldn't be without it. It's pretty flexible. I think it'll stretch about 12 feet. I actually have a connector on mine, and I have 2 of them. So that
Dennis has 2 of everything. He even had 2 shapers for a while.
Five
routers, right? Yeah.
They're definitely 5 routers. So, and Mike's going to have one before the end of the day. Then he's going to have 4. So, the nice thing about this hose is it comes with several different connectors. So, if you're using a shop vac, or I have a fine vac in my shop that I connect to, and I can connect it to the bandsaw, or sometimes I'll connect it to my table saw if I have the blade guard on to catch a little bit more dust. But the nice thing is it's really flexible, and then it pretty much compresses back to a smaller state. So it works pretty good for me.
Pretty handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, they've got these connectors that fit on various hoses. Now, one of my tools, which is a DeWalt 6-inch random orbit sander, one of the early ones, had an oval fitting on it. And so what I did was I went to the home center, got a piece of hose that's designed for sump pump hose. And I just heated the end of that, and then just started forming it. And so I was able to get it onto an oval shape and then connect that hose into this. So if you've got an irregular shape, that hose that you can get, that real lightweight stuff, you can just melt it and then just kind of form it on there. So a little tip.
Yeah, and the other thing I guess I didn't point out is that it is a quick connect. So it's a little tougher for me because my hands don't work as good as they used to. But it's just a quick connect on there. So you can go from tool to tool. Mm-hmm. Just like that. So that's the other handy thing.
Yep. And then we've also got this little dust hook that we did. This was a project we did, I think, back in 2019. We do sell these, but the idea is that, when you're sanding, if you've got that hose dragging across the edge of the table, it's always wanting to pull on this or, disconnect it. So anyway, you can hang a series of these hooks up just above your bench or wherever you need, and they're just basically, I think they're made out of 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood. So just a handy little thing, makes sanding a whole lot easier. We do have them in kits.
Yeah.
We're going to give a couple of these away today, but if you're interested, you can get the kit. It comes with the plan and the plywood blanks and everything, so you can make 4 hooks, 3 of them.
There's 4 blanks there.
4 blanks, so you can make 4 of them. So handy little thing to do at the bench.
I have 2 of them in my shop, and one of them is for sanding, and the other one, actually, you saw it, Steve, it runs over to my shaper so that hose is always out of the way. So they're pretty handy for something so simple.
Then we've also got the quick lock system for hooking up. If you're not doing a whole dust system in your shop, you're just running hose across the floor to each tool. These are pretty nice. This goes on the
Hose.
and this goes on the tool. Anyway, it's magnetic. It's got these little studs. Just clicks and you're good to go. So pretty handy little things. Takes a little bit of an investment to get all your tools set up because you've got to get 1 or 2 for the dust collector.
You need one of these for every hose that you're trying to connect, and then you need one of these for every tool you're trying to connect.
Right, and we've got one set up on the planer here and our bandsaw back there, and so pretty handy thing.
Did anybody see that promo we sent out on the Hose Connect? That was in my shop. So it's one of the best things that I've done personally, because just the way my workflow is, and just to take that one hose and go from an edge sander to a jointer to the drum sander, it's pretty cool, and it just made my life a whole lot easier. So it's one of the best upgrades I've done in quite a while, outside of that shaper.
The first, second one.
Right, yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah. Another handy little thing, if you're looking for some tool activated options, we've got an eye socket system. Plugs in, you can plug a tool into this. When the tool comes on, this will activate the vac then too at the same time. It also has a little switch on it where you can bypass that and just use it as regular outlets. So if your shop vac or something, if you don't have a dust extractor, and you want that to automatically come on, get a couple of these for the shop, and you can have that option. So pretty handy.
There's one of those sitting back on the back wall there. That's what we use for the chop saw station.
Yeah.
Works real well. Just be careful. You probably don't want to overload that with like a dust collector and a shop vac, and then I think they're rated for like 15 amps or something like that. So just don't overload it.
Right.
I think at one of the last seminars you had a little key fob that you hooked to your deck.
I did, and
The
I don't have it
Bluetooth
with me
ones.
today.
So I went to Menards and got a thing for Christmas tree lights to go outside, and it's got 3 remotes, 3 sockets, and so I have 2 different dust collectors, a shop vac and a dust collector, and I keep that after seeing you.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got 3 buttons, and I can just turn it on either one that I want.
Yep.
And it's super handy. It was a great tip that I saw from you.
It is. Yeah. It is. That's a nice unit. That's what I use at home. I just didn't bring it with me today.
It's for outdoor Christmas tree lights, and it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, it's less than $50, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah. Sounds like you got pretty much the same thing that I have. I had gotten mine at Home Depot, but
Yep.
Mine, when I had my general saw, it worked just fine. But then when I upgraded to my woodsmith, it won't carry my woodsmith saw, my saw stop saw, and my
Oh,
head.
just too much amperage for it. Yeah.
which is why I mentioned that, is that you got to be a little careful. It'll kind of handle a shop vac, but you get into a saw and stuff like that, it probably is a little bit, it's not really meant for that.
Another cool product, excuse me. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or not, but Craig just came out with their dust separator. So if you're like me and you don't have a dust collection unit at home anymore, I'm in a limited space right now, so I'm dust extractor and shop vac, but I do plane a lot of stuff from time to time. And so the problem with planing going directly to a shop vac, it just fills the shop vac up just within a minute or so, and it's a mess. And so anyway, this dust separator, which I think is less than $60 from Craig, just goes on top of a 5-gallon bucket, and it basically collects all the big chips, and then all the fine dust goes on over to the shop vac. So it does a pretty good job. Right now it's empty, so we're just going to run a piece of lumber through there real quick. Just kind of illustrate how it works. This all set?
Should be. Let's push it through and see what it says. Yep.
So that does a pretty good job. I mean, yeah, you'd have to empty this bucket probably every 4 or 5 minutes, but that's a lot easier than dealing with the shop vac. So it'll really help extend your filter life then too. For those of you who've used a shop vac for a while, you know how much fun it is to take those filters out and knock all the dust out.
Man.
I mean, it's...
Now, I don't have one of these. I don't have one of these. But my neighbor had one, and he just swore by it. He says, "Oh man, I don't have to I don't have to clean filter anymore." Well, I'm sure he's exaggerating a little bit, but it certainly extends that life. Because, man, after a while, that dust filter you got to go outside and just whack it against the fence for an hour. Oh.
That built-in fan on that particular planer, it's a nice feature of that planer.
Now,
That's interesting.
I use that dust collector at home, and I don't have any trouble with that, for sure. Uh-huh.
Are you talking about with the Laguna, the small Laguna?
It's more like that.
More like that?
I picked it up at a...
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I don't ever have any trouble with that, but boy, it sure pulls the dust or the chips out.
Yeah, a lot of planers don't have those fans built in, but that particular model does, even if you're not using dust collection, it'll shoot it out pretty good.
Oh, man.
So.
You'll notice if you didn't prepare for that, it sounds like it's all over the shop.
Oh, buddy,
Well, you wheel
that's
it out in
happened
the
before.
driveway, point it towards the
Yeah.
neighbor's house. And yeah.
And it's amazing, just like 5 to 10 seconds that it takes you to realize that that's happening, just how much crap went through there in 10 seconds.
So one thing I wanted to do, we kind of illustrated this seminar for you, just so you could, number one, take some things home, but it also keeps me on track. But one thing I wanted to do was just go through the concepts of the different types of dust collectors and stuff that are out there. So when you start with the shop vac, we're looking at this first illustration here, which is the first page on your sheet. Quite often there's a little elbow on the inside of it, and that's driving all those chips down. Now, if you have any kind of block or anything that gets in there, it gets stuck in that elbow. It's highly annoying. It drives me crazy. But that's kind of what it's doing. I mean, this is a very basic filter system. So, I mean, you've got a filter here, a motor up above. It's bringing all those particles into that single bin, trying to drive all those particulates to the bottom. But then it goes up, all the light dust goes up into that filter. And it's most of them are relatively small filters compared to what you're seeing here. Well, that's why that filter fills up so much, is because there isn't just very much distance there between the entry of all those particles and the exit of the fresh air. And then of course the exhaust is sort of like, it's mostly dust free, but not completely. I mean, some stuff's gonna come on through. So when you look at what we call a single stage dust collector, you've got a fan and a turbine and a motor down here below. It's driving all those chips up to a central point and then letting all the stuff fall down, but then the filter is separated, unlike a shop vac. So you're getting a much more efficient system with all those particles dropping into the bag, and some of the fine particles dropping into that bag too, but less of the fine particles that are going up into the filter, and therefore the filter's lasting a lot longer. And of course, when you look at even the filter on this And that dust collector compared to what you're seeing on a shop vac or a dust extractor, it's a huge difference. Now, a lot of these bigger dust collectors originally came with bags, you know, and they would only filter so much, and they were never any fun to clean, and they always got dirty on the outside, and so you'd have to, you know, pound on those things to get them clean. Well, with these, you know, we've got full cartridges. It's almost like a fuel filter, an oil filter or something, that do a much better job. Now, they also have this thing on the top, and that's going to clean that filter then too. Believe it or not, once in a while we have some customers come in and ask what this handle's for, what that does. And so that cleans that filter. So pretty handy. That's what we call a single stage. Now you'll notice there's a little dashed line right here on the drawing. Now if you go past that dashed line, Dennis gets really upset when he has to go and change that bag.
Who has to change the bags here? Yeah, Danny does.
So, know the limits of the bag. And apparently I don't know the limits because I came in and planed a bunch of stuff and left
Lord.
it, and then I came in the next day and there it was all over the floor. So anyway, if you don't want to have Dennis or your counterpart upset with you, make sure and change those
And
bags.
what does that say? Don't be cheap.
Don't be cheap is what Dennis
I'm
says.
telling you.
You
Empty it
also
a
get
little sooner.
Yeah, you also get the disposable bags with those too, which are a nice option. So that's a single stage setup. And here again, these are just concepts. This may not be entirely accurate, but you get the idea. So when you go to a two-stage system, the filter and the motor are really separated even further from what the single-stage system is. So you'll notice that there's sort of a cyclone-shaped bin here, and you get all these dust and particles coming through, and there's a tube usually that sticks down into that cyclone-shaped container up above. That's where it's sucking all the air up through. So when that comes through, you'll notice that tube is lower than what the entry point is. So when it comes through, it's automatically starting to swirl and drop all those particles down into that container below. So it's even more efficient than what a regular dust collector would be. So you're going to get even less of the fine particles going over to the filter, and it just becomes a much more efficient system. And it's really kind of creating a vortex. So when that stuff comes around, it's swirling around and just dropping it down in. And if you've ever watched like a regular dust collector with the clear bags while you're planing, you'll notice that when it goes in there, it kind of does that on its own. It kind of spins around. Well, this just magnifies that action and makes that more efficient. Now, the air that comes back up through the impeller and the motor area is driven to usually a filter that's probably about this tall, you know. So it's a big filter even compared to these. And quite often you'll see a small bag, another collection bag on the end of that filter. Not all of them have that, but it's another bag that just captures all the fine dust. So when you're thinking about setting up a whole shop system, you know, that's why these cyclones are a lot better. Whether it's a single stage cyclone or double stage cyclone, it's certainly a much better system and much more efficient. More money, but you get what you pay for.
Right.
So, and quite often you'll see 2 or 3 ports on these as well. So you can hook up 2 to 3 sources at the same time. So anyway, just a little primer on that.
For a smaller shop though, how big is that difference between your single stage versus double stage of that Cyclone? Obviously some difference, but for lower moderate volume, do you get a lot of improvement in your life with the extra set of Cyclone and whatever?
I think you're just going to get more capacity, and you know, I think for most of us who don't have, you know, I was talking to Bob about this a little bit the other day, You know, it's like, well, how many people actually set up overhead piping and stuff like that? And, you know, kind of most of our opinions here, at least on staff, is that most of us don't have that set up. We just go, we do what kind of like what Dennis does. You know, we have connections set up on those tools, you know, and so you're really only pulling from a single tool at one time. Where if maybe you're in a production shop, you're running 2 big tools, and you're really putting a lot of demand on that and really driving a lot of particles through it, that's probably where it's going to make the biggest difference. I will say though that, you know, you saw the demonstration on the little Craig separator. There are separators that have Cyclone type heads on them, and I've heard really good things about those. Oneida makes them. That would probably be an upgrade over what this Craig model is and maybe give you a little bit more capacity. So, you know, to answer your question, I think for most home shops, you know, a standard single stage dust collector is going to handle 95% of what you probably need it to do. Yeah.
That's what I use in mine, is that. And I started out with a shop vac, just like we all do, and eventually graduated to that, and it does a fine job. Personally, if I had a dedicated shop, per se, that's all it was a shop, and there was a chance or an area that I could put a dust collector and just, it's always going to be there, and maybe even it's outside or it's in another separate, so the noise and everything, I'd probably look into something like that as an investment. But that does me just fine.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of people who have shops in their basement, you know, considerations there are a little different because you're introducing dust into the whole house.
Good point.
There's a significant other factor that.
Yeah. It depends on who does the dusting and vacuuming, which at my house it's me, it seems like. And the cooking. Yeah, but it does become more important when it's in a basement, you know, and how loud it is too is important, you know. I mean, I know my dad's first dust collector, I don't know, maybe he still even has it, but that thing, I think it was a Shopsmith. Man, I mean, you could hear that a block away. I mean, it would just, it howled. Oh yeah, you know, I mean, if you were in the house, I mean, there's no watching TV or listening to music or anything, or even reading a book. But those would be considerations too. If you wanted a better dust collection system, you know, Cyclone might be more appropriate for like a basement type thing where you're wanting just really good filtration, you know, all the way around. And actually we've got some examples of that coming up. Now, one thing that, you know, when you talk about this little Craig dust separator, that's kind of what you're doing, is you're turning your shop vac from a single stage to a double stage collection system. So Dennis and I have been talking about doing a project, and we haven't done it yet, but we just sketched up this idea. Does anybody here have a Sears shop vac by any chance? Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, well, I still have one too, and the thing won't die. Yeah. And I swear, it has got more suction than, I don't know what they did to that thing, but I mean, it is powerful. It's loud and it's powerful. So, and it drives me crazy. I mean, it's just like my dad's dust collector. It just howls, you know. So we've talked about, well, what if you created a box that had some insulation on the inside and you just stick that thing in there just to quiet it up, you know. And shop vacs tend to fall over all the time too when you're pulling on them, and they fall over, and then there's a little ball in there that gets stuck and it freaks out, and so that would also keep it from falling over. But you could also integrate a dust separator into that, maybe above it, and just have kind of a whole cabinet. And then you could add like the eye socket to where, you know, you've got automatic on and off. You could even on the other side have a little flip up sanding table for hand sanding. Because hand sanding, that's one area where, you know, you can't really hook dust collection up. You can hook it up to the edge of a bench or something like that, but you could have a little box section table that would fold up, and have a leg on it. It could be a little hand sanding center and maybe even a little tool and dustpan storage area above. So we've kind of coined it as our little shop vac caddy. So we may do that as a project. I was actually hoping to have one built for the seminar here today, but the sketch is the next best thing. So, so anyway, that would turn your shop vac or your dust extractor into a 2-stage system. Another way to do it is to use a garbage can with a lid on top. And whether the lid's stiff enough or not, you may have to, use a piece of plywood for the top. But just by using some PVC fittings and an elbow and a dust can bottom here, you could create a fairly large volume, 2nd stage dust collection just to get all your chips in. And that way, you're not worrying so much about that bag filling up so quick, because it's pretty amazing how quick you can fill that bag up. I mean, we've come in and planed, 5 or 6 8-foot long boards.
And that's going to fill it.
Down from an inch to 13/16, and heck, that thing's half full to 3/4 full.
Yep.
It's almost at the dentist line.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, let's just reiterate that. Because Dennis is the one that has to change it. And if you've ever changed one of those, there's no way of doing it good. It's just, you pull that filter off, you grab that bag, and all of a sudden, it's on you. It's everywhere. Well, I'm the only one. There ain't nobody else emptying that bag. And just to put a fine point on it, because he brought it up, he poked the bear. There's a vac back there on that cutoff saw. There's a fine vac right up here that we use quite a bit. And there's a fine vac out in the shop for the track saw. Well, one day, one of the guys says, man, I can't get this to work. When I open it up, and it's just full. The bag is full. I had to cut the bag and then scoop some out so that I could get the bag out so I could throw it away. When I did that one there, that doesn't have a bag. It took me forever to pull that lid off because it was so embedded in
that's
the
a problem with
sawdust.
shop vacs.
And the same way with that vine vac.
Yeah.
So when I say don't be cheap, do it sooner rather than later, that's why. Okay, I vented enough.
Okay. Another way to make a more permanent 2nd stage would be to build a plywood box that you see up here. And this could have a bin that pulls out, but basically on the inside of it, you've got a baffle here. You've got the dirty air coming in one side, and it's hitting that baffle, and then it's also got these 45-degree ledges here that are just pushing those particles down into that bin. Then once that fills up, you can pull that bin out, empty it, throw it back in. So problem with the garbage can, I think, is that it's round, it's tippy, it never really fits into a corner, doesn't fit in next to a cabinet. So if you were serious about it, I would think about building something out of MDF or plywood that would give you that 2nd stage. And, if you've already got one of these decent, either one of these, that could be a really nice addition to your shop and a good way to just handle more volume and give your filters and your bags a little bit more life. And, surprisingly enough, we have sold a ton of these small Lagunas. And it doesn't have quite the CFM of what the Jet does, but it's got all the same components. And the thing I like about it is that it's small. You can push it into a corner. It doesn't take up a lot of space. But for a single machine, table saw, planer, it's got everything you need. So, and the price point's really good on it. But if I was planing all day, I probably want some sort of secondary dust collection like this box. So another little project idea for you if you don't have anything else to do.
And one of these days, maybe you'll see one of those here. We'll probably end up doing that
I
at
think it
some
would be a
point in
good
time,
project.
just to-
Couple of tools that come to mind for me that are difficult to get dust collection set up on are the chop saw and the table saw. Bandsaw works pretty good just with built-in stuff. Planer usually works pretty good. The router tables these days, you know, you can get dust collection underneath and dust collection at the fence. That usually typically works pretty good. But in my case, I had an old Delta contractor saw, great saw, old saw, but I mean, I don't think it was ever gonna die. I finally ended up selling it, but I wanted to get dust collection set up on it. The problem is you got this motor hanging out the back and you've got a couple of trunnions there and there's just all this junk hanging off the back end of it. So what I did was I just made 3 panels out of 1/4-inch hardboard and then just used double-sided Velcro along the cabinet edges and then just pieced it in. And to get the templates right, I just started with some foam core and just kind of started shaping it, you know, and trying to fit it in there and stuff. Now the one thing it doesn't do is when you go to bevel that blade, well then you got to pull all that stuff out. So I was actually thinking about this last night, trying to get prepped for the seminar.
Prep.
And I was thinking, well, you know, you could just build a box around the whole thing, you know, and just kind of maybe let the box hang out, and maybe part of that box could be an extension of your table saw top too, if you wanted a little bit more support. But within that box, then that motor could swing back and forth. So that would be another way to deal with it. So I had to close that end up, and then of course I had to close the bottom up. Now the saw stop contractor saw that we have, you can buy a plate for the bottom that adds dust collection with a 4-inch port. Since this was an old saw, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't get one piece up in there, so there again I did 2 pieces, and then I just ran an elbow out the bottom and got the 4-inch connection there. So if you've got a contractor saw, that's kind of about the only way you can do it as far as trying to get good dust collection from the cabinet side of things. Which brings me to, you know, there's a lot of things right now with the whole overarm dust collection. And I'll show you one that I built that I like really well. But in this illustration, this is kind of a rough representation of like the saw stop entry-level overhead dust collection system that you can get. Because in reality, you know, when you're making a cut, about 50% of that sawdust is coming off the top of the blade. So, you know, you got 50% roughly on the bottom, 50% on the top. So just collecting it from the bottom isn't going to do it. I mean, you're still going to get a lot of dust through there. So the overarm dust collection is really a nice add-on. Now there's pros and cons to it because it seems like it's in the way all the time. And Dennis made the comment, you know, well, I like to see the cut while I'm cutting, you know, and so these tend to obscure all that, your vision and stuff. Now they also, on the flip side, keep your hands away from that blade too, because there is a guard there. So those of you who pulled your guard off, this sort of gets you back in check. But I think one thing that we've ran into when you're starting to add overarm dust collection and dust collection below, trying to do it with one machine doesn't work all that great because you're trying to pull from 2 different sources. And quite often that overarm dust collection is a smaller diameter. So hooking up a 4-inch hose to that small diameter tubing really doesn't work that well, because that small tubing, just like the shop vac, that's high velocity, low volume, where a dust collector is high volume, low velocity. It's actually flipped. It'll move a lot of material, but it doesn't have quite the suction that what like a shop vac might. So what I ended up doing was just having a shop vac hooked to that overarm dust collection separately. And that gives me that high pressure that I need going through that small tube. So it works better than hooking a dust collector up to it. and then hook the dust collector up to the bottom of it where, you know, it's another source. To me, that was my fix,
Right.
was to separate those two, and I got pretty good dust collection out of it. So something to think about.
And that's like, I have the overarm dust collection on my saw stop, and that was one of the reasons I bought this hose, was to, because I wasn't getting good enough dust collection on that overarm, and you actually suggested it. So when I got the fine back, I got that hose, and then a lot of times when I do use that blade guard, which I'm not real good about putting it on all the time, you know. But when I do, I'll just hook this hose up to that port on the blade guard, and it actually works pretty darn good. It's just that it's just another step, and sometimes I don't take that other step.
Right.
So do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing. But
So this was the project that you see up here on the screen that I built for mine. This was in Wood Magazine. You can go to their wood store and buy the plans. I happened to, when I used to work there, I was an illustrator there for like 16 years, and so they'd always have these prop sales, and so I ended up buying the actual project that they had. But anyway, this plan's available. The thing I like about this plan is that this arm here has a latch on it. So when you're not using it, you just unlatch it and the arm flips out of the way. Because that's what I ran into, is that it works for some things and other things it doesn't. So I needed to be able to flip it out of the way. The other kind of cool thing about it, and this one's set up for a 4-inch port, is that unlike the saw stop, which is a really small shroud, at least their entry-level one, this dust collection box here is fairly wide. It's about that wide and about yay tall, and then it's got plexiglass on the top so you can see that cut.
dip, you can see the cut.
But you can move that back and forth, but you can also see the blade while you're cutting. So, you know, if you're making a cut that's half-inch or half-inch or so, you can slide that over to where you can still make that cut and still get some pretty good dust collection. So if you've got a saw and you don't want to buy an aftermarket add-on, this is a great project to add to your saw. It takes a little bit of work, but it worked good for me. So the other problem child is the miter saw, and I think it's even worse than the table saw. What you're really going to have to do is you're going to have to create some sort of angled box that generally everything funnels towards. But you know, it depends on, you know, as far as the built-in dust collection, sometimes they're overhead, sometimes they're down low. It could be in various spots, but that's usually going to be a smaller, you know, hose that hooks up to like a dust extractor or something like that. Here again, a good portion of that dust isn't going up through that. So if you can build a box and have like a fixture, like a HVAC fixture, you know, you can see that this has a square cut in the bottom, and this is a HVAC fixture with your 4-inch hose. Here again, it's just like the table saw. You're pulling from one area and another area. And if you look at our radial arm saw out here, it's set up the same way. There's one overhead and then there's one down below, and still don't capture everything. The wall still has dust on it. But any little bit that you can capture is a good thing, both for health reasons and cleanup. So, and obviously, you kind of have to design, depending on how your miter saw is set up, you got to kind of figure out what's going to work. Because if you've got a miter saw with those rails, those sliding rods, you know, it's pushing way back, and it's like, that's a tough one to try and come up with dust collection on. But anyway, another idea. I think this idea came from fine woodworking. The other place that seems to have a lot of dust is the floor. You can create just with some PVC pipe, just create a floor sweep. And basically it's just some T's, some PVC, cut some slots in the bottom of the PVC pipe, pop some end caps on, a little larger diameter wheels on both ends, and boom, you got a nice little floor sweep. So that's nice compared to the ones that you buy that are only this wide and then they suck down to the floor, and and so I haven't actually tried this yet, but it's on the list of stuff to do. So another quick idea for you guys. So with that, we're going to show you just a quick little video, and this was done by Jim Downing, my dad. He did some interesting things with his shop as far as how he laid things out. Now we're getting into kind of more whole shop systems. So we're going to watch the video, and then we'll have a little Q&A after the end of that, and then we'll talk about we'll touch on some shop layout ideas.
Let's talk about dust collection. It's a dirty subject, but we gotta deal with it. This is a typical dust collector. It's basically a blower that draws the dirty air through the piping from your power tools into the bags. The lower bag is actually the debris bag where all of the dust and chips and everything gather, while the upper bag acts as a filter. High-performance aftermarket filter bags are available for an even cleaner output. I place my dust collector in the corner where it's out of the way. The dust collector then connects to 4-inch piping which runs up the wall and along the ceiling, connecting to all the various power tools. I located my first dust intake right above the miter saw. I use it for both the miter saw and the planer. Since the planer ejects a large amount of dust chip, it's important to locate it as close to the dust collector as possible. Next, I ran my dust collection down to the table saw. I've found using a table saw one of the best ways to collect dust is with an overarm blade guard dust collecting system. I've found that a large majority of the dust from a table saw is actually coming off the top of the blade, so the overarm blade guard actually does a very good job of clearing the air. You can buy one, or if you're like me, you can make your own. I found this plan online and it really works great. If you have a table saw that has a dust collection port like most cabinet saws do, you can simply put a Y in the hose to connect that lower port. Since most dust collection systems can't handle all of the pickups at once, I installed a blast gate at each workstation. The blast gate turns off the airflow to maximize the efficiency of the system. Notice the metal pipe being used, the tape on the pipe joint, and the caulking around the blast gate to keep the air piping tight. My system at home uses lightweight PVC piping. I didn't glue any of the joints together, which makes it easy to clear out any clogs that I might get in the piping. Plus, it's easy to take apart and modify if my shop layout changes. If you choose to use PVC piping, static buildup could be a problem. To prevent static buildup, you can wrap your piping with copper wire and run that down to a proper ground. I found that most blast gates don't fit the PVC piping exactly, so I made my own. I made mine using PVC fittings and birch plywood to make the sliding gate. The mistakes that I made with my system, it was the 2 drops at the workbench. The problem is, the tools used at the workbench are usually portable power tools. Portable power tools have small outlets and the dust collection system has a large hose. What I found that works best with all my portable power tools is to connect them to a shop vac or a dust extractor. Dust extractors are superior because they have hoses that are designed for portable power tools, and they have a built-in outlet that turns on the shop vac when you turn the tool on. The other advantage is that they have a superior filtration system that keeps nearly all of the dust out of the air. But try as we might, there are still fine dust particles floating in the air. I've found the best solution for that is to mount an air filtration system on the ceiling to filter and circulate the air around the shop. Here's what I did in my shop. I installed a furnace blower and a plywood box on the ceiling near the wall, and a filter box above my workbench. The filter box contains 2 filters, a standard furnace filter along with a 4-inch thick high-performance filter. The 2 boxes are then connected with a round metal duct. And here's how it works. The dusty air is drawn through the filter box. Clean air is then pulled through the blower where it's circulated around the shop and back to the filter. Consider mounting it near your workbench where your sanders might be generating a lot of dust. To prevent dust from entering the rest of my house, I added a high-efficiency filter to the cold air return in my shop. Now my shop is pretty much dust-free. Thanks for watching the seminar. I hope you picked up some ideas and tips for making your shop more efficient and dust-free.
So he covered a lot of stuff there, but I thought there were some interesting points. One, that whole idea of, you can buy just an air filter box and it pulls dust in, and expels clean air. And theoretically, like he said, you should mount it somewhere close where you have a lot of dust. But in his situation, he was actually creating the inlet at one end and then the blowers at the other end. So he's creating airflow through that whole system. So I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. And all he did was he took an old furnace blower, made a box, which you were going to do, but you didn't do.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of an upgrade to something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. We use that a lot, and it does make a big difference.
Makes a big difference.
We always run that. If we don't run it, then there's dust on the printer out here usually.
Yep.
The other interesting thing I thought was that he talked about, as far as shop layout, we'll think about where those tools that are going to have a lot of chips are going to be located in relation to the dust collector. So he immediately said, that planer, that's the biggest one. So we wanted to make sure that that dust collector wasn't too far from that planer, and that way he's getting really good efficiency that way. He also touched on, PVC versus metal. Obviously, there's pros and cons to that, and we're going to try and get into that in the next seminar. But basically, in a nutshell, metal is grounded. You can get all the fittings from the home center. It's basically just duct work, and a lot of the dust collection fittings that we sell here automatically fit most of that stuff. Now, he showed a joint that was taped together. The problem with taping the joint together is that if you get a clog, you're going to have to pull that all apart. And if it's like a duct system where everything's connected, and you built it as you go, you kind of have to unbuild it to the clog. So he made the comment he uses PVC because it was cheap. He didn't glue, the seams together. You can pull all that apart pretty easy, but you do have to ground it because it's just like a shop vac. If you run it for a half an hour and you go to touch that thing, you're going to get a good shock. So you can even almost sometimes see the static built up on those hoses. So anyway, some interesting things there that we will definitely touch on next time. These are super handy. We sell a ton of these. I think Dennis has these just on his ports for his main dust collector.
I use these, and then one is into the port, and then the other one is the blast gate.
Yeah.
It's worked really well for me.
Yep. And then these 2.5s are handy for shop vac stuff or things at the router table and stuff like
Yep.
that. So, good point. So, when you're thinking about designing a whole shop system, my advice is to try to sketch it out a little bit. Because you've probably already got, if you've already got your shop set up, then you're either going to have to figure out, and you like the way it works, you're going to have to figure out how to run all that ductwork to those tools. So you have to make a decision, well, am I going to redesign the shop, to be more efficient for the dust collection, or am I going to try and design the dust collection to have the shop set up the way I've had it for 20 years, and you're used to it. So this author here, if you look at this, he did a top view of his shop, but then he did a side view. And I thought the interesting thing is he was looking at the heights of all the ports. Some are low and some are high. Things at the bench would be higher. The other thing that you kind of have to think about is your lighting and stuff. And if you're in a garage that has a storage system up above, or you're in a basement that has heating and cooling through the top, you're going to have to think about where all that piping is going to run. So anyway, that's a good starting point, and it's sure to keep you busy for a couple evenings, just sketching around what that's going to be. Now Jim's system that he did it similar to this, to where this is around the perimeter. So he's got the dust collector over here, and then he's basically just running piping along the four walls and then having drops at the tools. And in this case, other than the table saw being out in the middle, it works pretty good. Another approach would be running a central section down the middle and then having branches that come off of that. And of course, things with that are going to be like, well, you almost have to decide, am I going to run 5 or 6 inch through the middle? And then it's going to branch off to 5 and 4 inch fittings. It's kind of like a home heating and cooling system where you'll see them step down sometimes in ductwork the further it gets away from the source. So that's another thing we're going to touch on in the next seminar. This example, they're literally, if you don't have a beam or anything in the garage, they're literally just running it diagonal, and then they can get to every machine, basically creating a system that has the shortest distance to the dust collector for every tool. In this case, you'll see that the jointer is kind of out in the middle, and there's a few more things going on there with that shop layout. But like I said, we're going to try and get another dust collection seminar set up and start to get into some of these things, the fittings and stuff like that. But now Dennis, he never set up dust collection, and I didn't either. But Dennis took a few photos of his shop just to kind of show you what he did.
I had high hopes for dust collection. I mean, when I moved in 23 years ago, it was 4 walls, and I knew it was going to be a shop. But my shop has, or the garage has a loft, if you want to call it that. It's just boards. And they were already there, so I thought, well, I need the storage too.
You can thumb through that if you want.
So once I did that, decided that, I thought, well, I don't know how to run stuff, piping to the different tools, so I just abandoned that and started doing what I do. I have the dust collector, I have a fine vac, and I actually have a Festool vac that I bought when I bought the shaper. So now, the fine vac used to be the sanding unit, and now it still is, and the Festool then is dedicated to the shaper and any sanding I do on that side of the garage. If in fact I were on this side of the garage, I'd probably go ahead and use that fine vac for sanding and stuff. But that just shows you the flexibility of that hose. And I hooked this up to both the edge sander. Did you get an edge sander?
No, not yet.
There's another tool. So I hook up both of them.
It's still early.
It's on my
Yeah. So,
we talk about this every Saturday. It's the same conversation.
but anyway, that's what I use for that. And like I said, those connectors they're really nice. Because the bandsaw, when I do use the bandsaw, it's got that little dinky port, so you gotta, but there's a connector for it too. And then there's the edge sander, and I
that's a
can't
neat box.
tell you enough. I mean, I'm not trying to be a shill here. I'm just telling you that those were a godsend. They work nice, and I have the blue hose and a clear hose. And the blue hose is the one that's the most mobile. It goes from edge sander to jointer to drum sander to planer. And the other hose just goes from table saw to my router. So, because what ends up happening is when I don't have the ability to go from planer to drum sander to, well, I can go to the joiner, but from the planer and the drum sander, they both sit in the same location. So I do one task at a time, put one away, get the other one out. And then, of course, there's the hose going to the table saw. And then when I am routing, then the router table just rotates 90 degrees like that, and then I can hook it up to that. And then that other hose that's hanging down, that would actually go up to the fence, and so there's dust collection at the fence too. And there's the fest tool. And the nice thing about that fest tool, just to get into that for just a moment, is I was having, one thing you do get with these is you can get some static electricity. And I was having a lot of it when I was using that at the shaper. And plus, when the shaper is plugged in, it's hot. Whether the motor's running or not, the machine is hot, which means if it's plugged into the dust collector, into the fine vac or whatever, that fine vac's on. So the fest tool comes with the Bluetooth, and so I was able to use the button to turn it on and off. So that's why I ended up with that. And that hose, it eliminated the static electricity that I was getting. So, and there's the dust collector in the back, and basically, just so you know, you see those tools lined up at the back of the garage door. That's where they sit until I need them. And that red stool there, I always say this, that red stool right there, that's coming over, that's for you. And there, I mean, you know, and I still have a Rigid. I hate that thing with a passion, but I just won't get rid of it. It's so noisy. It's just awful.
It's like my Sears Craftsman.
But at the same time, you know, when we were talking about this, I don't know, it's been 3 or 4 years ago now, I suppose, but he's the one that talked me into getting a fine vac. He says, well, you know, I don't really use a fine vac on the floor, but he says it sure does work good on sanders and stuff. So that's how I ended up with a fine vac. And so that is dedicated to just picking up crap on the floor.
Yeah, speaking of shop vacs, that's one thing that I did. I actually have an extra shop vac for the miter saw and the table saw. So, and my table saw is set up against a wall right here, and then the miter gauge is right here, miter saw is right here, and the miter saw table runs across the top of the table saw. And if the table saw, if I need to cut wide stuff, I roll it out then. But since those two are right here, which I like because I can saw and cut and saw and cut, there's a shop vac sitting there, and that goes to the overhead dust collection for the saw. But it also goes to a little box, transition box, where the shop vac's plugged in there, and I can just pull a gate, and that way it directs it to the table saw. If I shut the gate, it directs it to the miter saw then. So I'm using one shop vac with basically a transfer box, and that way I'm getting double duty out of it. But that shop vac, it never moves. It just stays there because I don't want to screw around with unhooking it. And,
That's a
you know,
good
and for
thing.
$100, $125, you can get a shop vac, and
Yeah.
you're good
Oh,
to go.
I hear you. So what did I tell you when you came over that night? I said, be sure to step over the hoses.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what I chose to do. I just could not figure out how to get it up and over, and at some point you give up, and I don't have any trouble with it. It's automatic for me, but when somebody comes over, I'm always telling them just step over. So I've not had any accidents due to that.
Well, there's your rubber
And
boots.
there's the rubber hoses, like I was telling you. That's a nice deal. It really helped. And there's why there's no overhead in there, because I knew going in that, well, I wanted that loft for sure, because I knew I needed stuff. And then I knew that clamps and stuff were going to be an issue. So, you know, what can't be on a wall's got to be up there. Plus, yeah, and until about 15 months ago, I used to park 2 cars in here. So now we're down to 1 vehicle, so, and you can see it's parked on the left side there now, so. This side of the, you know, what you're seeing here, that doesn't change much anymore. And that's, not that it ever took long, it only took about 5 or 6 minutes, 7 minutes to get everything in or out. But the fact I don't have to do that is kind of nice. Anyway, that's my dust collection. So.
Well, you know, the more I think about it, and this is just kind of an idea that popped into my head when you guys all started filtering in here, is I think we'll go on ahead and set up a dust collection system in here,
Oh boy.
and then we'll use that.
The royal we, it's all.
Boy. All I
Excuse
could
me,
hear was
Dennis
bend
will
over.
set up a dust collection
That's all I
system
heard is
here.
bend over.
Said we.
But we'll use that as a basis for our next seminar, and we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty. You know, if you are thinking about setting things up, there's a lot of online resources. There's a lot of volume calculators online too now. Heck, there's probably an AI chatbot that will tell you how much pipe you need and what size. I mean, but anyway, we'll get into that more. But I hope you got a little bit out of this, and this is kind of our first stab at dust collection, and I hope it was a little bit helpful for you. So, yeah.
I do have a question. My shop burned down, so I'm building it from scratch.
Oh, you're lucky.
In
Sort
some
of.
ways.
Yeah, it's painful to listen to this actually, because I think of all I had.
Yeah.
So when I'm building that, I was gonna put a basement underneath it, this crawl space. Is there any issue with running dust collection pipe underneath the shop and coming up where your tools are gonna be? Other than you better get them right the first time.
The only thing I would say would be clogs. Yeah. If you don't have access to it, you could get a clog down there. Yeah.
I'm wondering about the condensation on the lines underneath too, depending on that, how deep it is.
Yeah, if you're drawing warm air in there in January and you're driving warm air, you'd probably have to insulate it.
Better insulate it.
Yeah, you
Well,
probably
maybe
have
put
to,
some air exchange, so,
And ground.
yeah.
yeah, ground it as a steel. What other question around that? I live out in the country, so I can blow dust wherever I want to. So as long as is there any issue, why have the filters and all that if I can blow dust straight outside? Would that decrease the pressure on the system, increase your volume and your speed, and should just blowing it directly outside?
I think as long as you don't have anything like animals outside or neighbors or
Might bug the
shiny
dogs.
black truck,
Yeah, we don't want it, no dust on that.
I don't think there would be a problem. I did, when I was kind of doing some research for this, I did see that a guy had run piping out the shop and then had a Cyclone system set up on a stand, but there was no collector bag at the bottom. So it was just dumping everything. It wasn't dumping the fine particulates onto that pile, but all the big chips, it was just dumping them in a pile on the ground. You know, so
You just do it with skid steer or something.
yeah, could be, but yeah, I guess it would just depend on if you felt like you were going to have a lot of volume to where it is a problem trying to keep it emptied, you know, inside. But I don't see why you couldn't.
Yeah, that, and as far as some of the wind, which way the wind's blowing and that kind of stuff and how strong the wind is.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
for sure.
Yeah, whether your house gets dusty and all that on the outside. And,
That or even just
300 yards to the next anything.
back blowing it.
yeah, yeah.
It's still just a matter of blowing it out. The wind's coming this way, then it's blowing and coming back. And
I mean, it
Takes
isn't
up-
going to be like the wildfires in Canada, is it? to where we're all driving to work and you're planing and it's like you can't see anything.
I hope I can keep that busy.
Yeah.
My first thought was my brother-in-law would probably tell you to run your heating in the floor when you're just getting set up, but I don't know anything about that stuff, but that was my first thought when you mentioned that.
That works great. You still have to put ducts in to run air conditioning.
Yeah.
So once you put those in, really,
Yep.
you pay twice.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless it's a bathroom where you want your feet warm when you get out of the shower.
Anything else? Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate it
All right. Thanks for coming.
greatly.